Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark Snyder. Welcome to Ohio Exopolitics. We are simulcasting with Revolution Radio. There is my producer, Keith Roberts.
100%.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are there other humans in our Milky Way galaxy? What is our real history? What happens after we die? Who or what created our universe? What is the purpose of our life? What evolutionary steps does human society go through? Who built the ancient monolithic sites found all over the Earth? How do the extraterrestrials travel from star to star system and almost make time passing? Ohio Exopolitics is on at 8:10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio. Join Mark Snyder as he interviews a myriad of excellent guests each Saturday night on Revolution Radio.
At freedomslips.com.
Hi, this is the voice known as Tammy Pepperman. Have you ever thought about how this seems like a farm? The food comes with daily recommended allowance, just like any other farm animal. If you get out of line, you get prodded, slapped, or killed if you're too much liability. And if you are not earning your keep, you can find yourself in prison for non-payment of taxes or child support. If you're tired of being farm product, join us every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Studio B, and Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. on Studio B, right here on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic ride.
Once again, time for Ohio Exopolitics Radio with your host, Mark Snyder. Join him with his ongoing research of the fact that we may not.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. For the first hour, we're going to talk with Susanne Posel about some of the fascinating stuff she's got on her website. And during the second hour, we're going to dive down the Billy Meier rabbit hole, my favorite topic in the whole world, and I think Susan has agreed to stay with us. So that should be exciting. Susan, how are you this evening?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Why are you amazing? I'm glad to hear that.
Today has just been one of those it's been one of those days where it seems like it's like an episode of the Three Stooges.
Oh, really?
That's what today has been like.
That doesn't sound particularly amazing, though. Or good, anyway.
It's once my husband and I realized that things were going to go according to plan, but they were going to go according to plan in a Three Stooges kind of way, we just sort of laughed it off. So it's been interesting every time we have an interaction, something goes, crazy.
Sometimes I look at the world situation that way, too, kind of like a Three Stooges comedy routine. If it wasn't so, devastating, you could almost laugh at it.
I try to laugh. I realize that things are not. I don't laugh at everything. I mean, there were inappropriate things to laugh at.
Sure.
But if you don't realize the comedy, then you're just going to end up in a room, a darkened room, looking out of your blinds. Your blinds will be all disheveled. You'll be freaked out every time a car drives by your house. You won't ever leave. You'll just stick your hand out the door to grab the paper and slide it back in. I mean, who wants to live like that?
Why don't you, before we dive into the meat and potatoes of the interview tonight, why don't you tell the listeners again about your website?
I would love to. My website is occupycorporatism.com. I also have an online newspaper for a media publishing house that I began about a year ago called Foundation Media. The online newspaper is the USindependent.com. And I am proud to say I've written so many articles about the snake oil salesman in the CBD industry and have been disgusted by the fact that you pay for 200 milligrams of CBD. In some cases, you're getting 42 milligrams instead of 200, and in some cases, you're getting 0 milligrams instead of 200. So on Monday morning, with my husband and I and a friend of ours who is a distributor, and Iron Laboratories, who has been doing independent research on or laboratory results on these companies who are selling these substandard products. I have found several items that are exactly what they test out. When they say 200 milligrams, they are 200 milligrams. So I have opened up BeyondCBD.com, where you can purchase real CBD products that are all laboratory tested. The laboratory results will be on the website so you can see them for yourself. And you know that you're not getting shafted, there is no snake oil, and all of these products are good, and they are what they say they are. So BeyondCBD.com, Monday morning. If you are interested in CBD, we'll also have news and YouTube videos and information. So if you don't know much about CBD, or if you know a lot about CBD, this would be a great resource for you to get information and share with your friends. So BeyondCBD.com, Monday morning.
So what again is CBD?
CBD is cannabidiol.
Okay. And that's actually good if you have problems with your digestive system or with your stomach and things like that. Did I lose you, Susan? Well, that was kind of strange. I'll have to check with my producer. Keith, can you hear me? Okay, I'm getting written messages. I cannot hear anything. Susan says, wow, did Blog Talk just shut us down or something? Some call dropped. Oh, okay. That's okay. Call me again. Yeah, that was weird. We said something. Oh. Gosh, call the number, Keith. Somehow Revolution Radio just got dropped. I don't know what caused that. Very, very strange. Sorry, folks. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty. There we go again.
Hello.
Thanks, Keith. Hello again.
Hello.
That was strange timing, wasn't it?
That was very strange timing. But,
I don't know
everything is serendipitous, I guess.
What is so controversial about CBD? It's good for your stomach and digestive system and stuff like that?
Absolutely. It tells the cells that are behaving abnormally in your body to shut off, and you expel them naturally. Any cell, including cancer cells that start behaving badly and doing these clumping together things that we call tumors, it tells them to shut off. It tells the cells that are behaving normally to continue to function that way and helps increase their ability to do so because it works with the gut, and that is where your immune system is. It's a natural immune system booster. You have 7 receptors in your brain, in your body rather, including many receptors in your brain that are receptors for CBD, so we are meant to take this in to keep us healthy. There are no adverse effects. You can take as much of it as you want, and I have done so much research on the snake oil where people are selling substandard products or selling you a fraction of what you think you're buying when you're buying a $40 bottle at 200 milligrams and you're only getting, 37 or 9 milligrams or 0 milligrams. I became enraged because this CBD actually works. It actually works if you have an anti-inflammatory need. CBD works.
Suzanne, let me interrupt. We are not on air live. I'm going to hang up this call and reconnect with the server. Something happened with my Skype. It just totally locked up and shut down, which rarely happens. But that's one of the things about live radio. We are not on air right now. Let me hang up on both of you. I'm going to reconnect the server and bring you both back in.
Okay. Great. That's weird, folks. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I can't really explain this.
Wow. We're still on Blog Talk, though, correct?
We are still on Blog Talk.
This is amazing to me.
I thought Keith called.
They're trying to call on the other side. I'll have to hang up this call.
Okay, go ahead and hang up. Go ahead. I'm waiting. I can hang you up if you like. I'll hang you up, Susan. Okay, there goes Susan. Weirdness. I did not foresee any weirdness this evening. Okay, we're back. We'll try one more time.
Wow.
Are we back?
We are on air.
Okay, Keith.
Wow.
We're back. Back on Revolution Radio. Back on Blog Talk. Sometimes when I add the Blog Talk Studio to the mix, it kind of gets a little crazy. This could be all my fault. So
I think it was on my end, Mark. Sometimes my Skype just freezes. It's very rare. I have a very robust connection and computer, but every now and then that happens. I think that's what happened.
It's very clear. I'll say that much. Susan, you
got
a
good
Skype.
Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I was just go.
Okay, good. I was just going to tell Susan that I think I might want to try this stuff.
Absolutely. On Monday morning, go to beyondcbd.com. I will have we're looking at 5 products right now, but we're also going to be adding more. These are laboratory tested and laboratory proven. So they're, and the lab results will be available on the website. So you can click on a PDF and you can read the current laboratory tests on the website. And all of the products are drop shipped, so you'll get them in about 2 weeks. And these products are, let me just give you an example. Last winter, I noticed that my knees weren't working very well, and I've played with my kids outside, and I crawl around on the ground a lot, and my mother has arthritis, and so I just suspected the swelling around my knees and the pain during the rainstorms and in the winter must be pre-arthritis. So I started taking the CBD, 2 lozenges a day, very low dosage because I was just testing it out, and the pain went away. The inflammation went away. I run up and down the stairs. I don't even think about it. So this winter, I'm not even concerned about the stairs. And the fact that CBD is, as far as the FDA is concerned, a nutritional supplement, you don't need to worry about medical marijuana or any of the stigma or anything else that comes along with it. This is not medical marijuana. This is the medicinal element of the plant that is extracted, made into a hemp paste, and then diluted, and usually in a drop form. They have a spray form. If you have respiratory illnesses and you take the spray, it's just like an inhaler, and it goes directly into the lungs, and so the particles go directly into the lungs where they need to be and help restore your body back to where it should be.
Very interesting. Now, we've got this whole Ebola thing to deal with. I don't know if this product would help with Ebola or not. I use a product called MMS, which I should talk about some night. It's very, very helpful. Suzanne, do you know why we have sent 4,000 combat-ready troops to Liberia?
Yes, I do.
What's that all about?
Well, ExxonMobil is in Liberia, and they're trying to extract natural gas and petrol. The ExxonMobil Exploration Corporation is working in conjunction with the Production Liberia Limited Corporation at the behest of the President of Liberia. And they have been doing surveys offshore in Liberia where they say that the Ebola threat is fairly low level and not really something to be concerned about while they're in the hardest hit area. Liberia is the hardest hit out of all the three nations, Guinea and Sierra Leone. The World Bank and the IMF have had this meeting starting about Wednesday of this week, and I reported on this because I saw that the World Bank had tweeted that they were going to have this meeting. What this meeting is taking the Millennium Development levels and taking it to the next level. So the development goals that they have, and they have had for quite some time, they're going to take this to the next generation, and they're looking for funding for these goals that they want to achieve. During this talk, the the director of the CDC said to the IMF and the World Bank and the member states that were represented there that Ebola was like AIDS, and started this campaign of fear-mongering throughout this little diatribe that he had while he was up on stage. And then the president of Liberia and the president of Sierra Leone made very interesting comments about how their countries have been devastated by Ebola, not just the disease and the succumbing of their citizens, but also in Sierra Leone, the president was most concerned about manufacturing and tourism and transportation, which is how they make their money, and how this has created a roadblock in the economic avenues that they have for their country. The Liberian president said, and I want to quote her directly, "Restrictions posed on air and sea travel resulted in increased cost of travel and increased commodity prices affecting the poor." So the untold story about Liberia and Ebola is that the IMF has just given $130 million to the Liberian government to help them with the struggle of Ebola. And ExxonMobil, to kind of kick sand in their faces, has given $150,000 to the Liberian National Red Cross Society, which is a NGO, a non-governmental organization, to create response teams and to be the government's premier method of fighting Ebola. Meanwhile, ExxonMobil is in Liberia calling for the president of ExxonMobil at a meeting in Houston, which is 20 minutes from Dallas, where the Liberian national came in through the airport and was diagnosed with Ebola. The president of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, called for ground support, for help extracting the natural gas and petrol offshore because of the problems that were happening with the locals. That is what's happening with Ebola. That is it's the same thing it goes all the way back to the French and Indian War, where they handed out blankets with smallpox because they wanted resources. It's an old tactic. It works. And if they bring over here into the United States and start talking about all the fear-mongering, this guy gets taken off a plane, U.S. Airways, because he makes a comment. And there are fake stories going around the internet that the treatment for Ebola only works for people who have white skin. That's a claim that someone made on a website saying that the CDC made this statement. I combed the CDC's website for 7 hours and did independent general keyword searches and could not find any quote that fit this quote attributed directly to the CDC. This is a hoax story. But let me tell you what's actually happening. Beyond Liberia and the raping of Liberia by ExxonMobil and the World Bank and the IMF that's happening right now, here in the United States, a company called Lakeland Limited, who sells hazmat suits, have seen their stocks rise 160% in the month of October, the same month we're in right now. They have said that the panic surge has caused purchases of the hazmat suits that they sell. And they're attributing this purely to public panic. And it is reminiscent of the run for gas masks in 2001 that everyone did after the World Trade Center bombing.
The country of Liberia is, now you can correct me if I'm wrong here, this is what I've been able to ascertain in my own studies, is these people, they live in what we might call filth and squalor. They eat bats, they eat monkeys. Some of these bats, I've heard, do carry Ebola, and some of the monkeys too as well. Does that coincide with what you've heard, or am I way off here?
The possibility that an animal can transfer a virus to a human is only a possibility if that virus has been engineered in some way. Oh. When Columbia University did studies, I don't know if you remember, I think this was a couple of years ago now, the Obama administration did not want scientists to be able to study the H1N1, or what is it, the swine flu. It was the bird flu, I apologize. Because they didn't want some crazy, whacked-out scientist to reverse engineer it and then create a bioweapon. And that was the reason why they gave these records to be sealed and the justification for it. Then the records were unsealed. And when Columbia University scientists studied the virus, they found that, in layman's terms, they explained it as three viruses sewn together: avian flu, swine flu, and human flu. And that does not in any way happen in nature ever, period, never happens. So that is proof that this was genetically engineered, because it just doesn't happen. The reason why they sew them together, so to speak, is so that it will infect other species. Otherwise, it's not going to affect other species. Mm-hmm. Viruses and bacteria don't just jump. They don't. If you look, they always give that excuse, oh, it jumps. It jumps from bats to humans. It jumps from camels to humans. Then no, it doesn't do that, because we're different. We're different species, and it doesn't jump. You might come in contact with it, but you're not going to feel any effects of it. That's why your dog doesn't get sick when you have the flu. Dogs are around you. You're coughing and sneezing on your dog. You have a cold. You cough and sneeze on your dog. Dog doesn't get it, because even though he's exposed to it, it's different. It's engineered to affect the human, not the canine. So he's not going to come down with anything. And that's the same thing here. But the ignorance of the masses with science and viruses and bacteria is preyed upon by media and by many other people. So that it creates this sense of panic that, oh my God, remember when SARS came out, and then you saw a huge rise in those masks, those surgical masks, where everyone was wearing them. This is because people don't understand how things work, and so the fear-mongering takes a hold when people just do a catch-all and totally freak out and take any precaution necessary.
Do you think that rabies would be an exception to the rule that you're talking about? I mean, you could get rabies.
I don't see why it would.
You could get rabies from a dog, right? A dog bite or something?
No, actually, there are.
Tough question. I'm sorry.
It really is a tough question, because it's apples and oranges. When it comes to viruses, viruses are tailored for the species that it affects, because it is a parasitic entity. So it needs the host, and it adapts itself to what the host provides, because then it thrives and uses up the host until it's done. There are differences in bacteria and viruses for every species, and all I have to say with that is, and I don't want to insult anyone, go to PubMed and look up Ebola. and look up the many different ways that it is transmitted, and I would stick with that.
Do you think there is an airborne form of Ebola now?
There is no airborne form of Ebola.
Okay.
The rumor going around that it is airborne stems from a study, and this study is linked in an article on my website, occupycorporatism.com. One of the doctors of that study noticed that the animals in cages were transmitting Ebola to each other.
Mm-hmm. And
he postulated that it was possible that a cough or a sneeze, that the Ebola was transferred on the particulates, the water molecules in the air, through a cough or sneeze from one animal to another. He did mention that this supposition was never further researched, and he recommended that further research in the future should be done on this question because the study never answered the question, okay? So this was this man's guess that has no scientific basis.
You bring up
his question was never scientifically studied, and therefore it's just a question, it's a theory. Now, to understand the Ebola virus, it needs to live in its host. That's why it is transferred through the blood and the saliva and the direct contact of the person. The people who are coming down with it are carrying and caring for the people who are sick. And so when you sneeze or cough, I understand that it could go out several feet. It could go up to, I think, about 15 or 20 feet. It's pretty remarkable. However, Ebola needs to be in its host in order to live. Outside of the host's body, it would be seconds before it were dead. So that means that you would have to be close enough to the sneezer or the cougher where you would get direct contact within seconds of the sneeze or cough. That also means that the animals in that study must have been in closer proximity to each other than some people have postulated in their assumptive articles, because in order to get the effect, they would have to have exposure to the Ebola within seconds of the cough or sneeze. But that also means that the animals were close enough to contact each other in other ways. So if you use scientific method, then you understand that you have to have a controlled environment to say that one thing is true over any other possibility. And because there are several possibilities where it's possible that the animals coughed or sneezed on each other, where it's possible that the animals touched each other or fought with each other or scratched each other in some way where they also contracted or transmitted the disease to each other. So unfortunately, we have a supposition that a doctor made as part of a study that has never been further researched and has not been scientifically proven. And it's been taken and leapfrogged into this idea that Ebola is airborne.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think you bring up a very good point about things that are stated as fact. And this occurs both in the mainstream media and the alternative media. I listen to Alex Jones pretty often. I think he does pretty good work, but sometimes I think he does state things as though they were fact. And when I do the research sometimes, I don't know that I could make some of the claims that he does. And he has, I believe, on his show several times talked about this study that you've brought up where Ebola went from monkeys, I think, to some other animal, and I don't even remember what other animal it was. But, you know, we have kind of talked about this whole thing before, and this leads a little bit into my next question, which I think you don't know that much about, but it was actually a very interesting show with Alex Jones and Michael Savage, and they're both talking openly about a potential civil war in America. And I think Michael Savage might even have a book that talks about a potential civil war. And I know that you've brought up several times in the show here about how this civil war is actually being staged. Is that correct, Susan?
Yes, it is. The Council for National Policy.
I know I like to repeat things because I think it clarifies things. So there are these two factions, and they're both in the alternative movement, and they're actually trying to set the stage for this civil war. Is that correct?
Yes, the Council for National Policy was founded in 1981, a couple of months after Reagan took office, with some of his members of cabinet as members of the Council for National Policy. Their head is Tim LaHaye, who is the author of the Left Behind series. Their major funder is Sun Myung Moon, a reverend of a cult who marries like 1,000 people all at once and thinks he's the reincarnation of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
They have several members in the alternative and independent circles, Larry Klayman of Judicial Watch, Pat Buchanan, Rand Paul, Stanley Monteith, Jerome Corsi, Paul Craig Roberts.
Did you know that Stanley Monteith just died? Did you know that? Recently.
I did not hear about that.
He just passed away, yeah.
Oh,
and every time I'm watching and listening to Alex Jones so much, gosh, and I don't mean to attack Alex Jones because I think he does some good work, but so if you listen to his show with the knowledge that you've given us, and I don't, I kind of am still testing it out, I'll call it the hypothesis that he's been put in place to basically stir us up, to stir people up to the point where they're so upset that they're willing to grab their guns and go after the bad guys, I guess. He's
just one. He's just one. Andrew Breitbart, who was recently killed, he was a member of the CNP. The chief executive officer at Newsmax, Christopher Ruddy, is a member of the CNP. The Washington Times is run by Sun Myung Moon. That is his newspaper, and he is the major contributor to financing for the CNP. It's very interesting to me to see so many names and faces. Some of these people I know, and some of these people I have known people that know them personally, and so to see all of this and when I joined the alternative media, I always felt that there was something not right. There was just something askew. There was an interest in.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but man, I tell you what. Oh, we could go off on a lot of tangents here, and I don't know your stance on some things, but the more research I do into certain things, I'm like, whoa, I think the alternate media is wrong about this. They need to look at this a little closer, but go ahead. Yeah, I just totally agree with you. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with you. I have a background as a paralegal, and a paralegal is a researcher. Paralegals research all of the information that builds your case and write all the briefs and all the summaries and then hand that to the lawyer, and the lawyer goes and pleads your case for you or prosecutes. So I brought those research skills with me when I became a journalist, and I was shocked that there was not enough evidence or emphasis on evidence and more emphasis on sensationalism and postulation and conspiracy theory.
Yes, it's sensationalism. They just work people up. It's like, I listen to Alex Jones on a regular basis, and I would be like, Alex, you're giving us a lot of information. Why don't we just stick to the information instead of yelling and screaming and... Oh, sorry, I'm ranting. But exactly. It's sensationalism.
It is sales and marketing. It's sales and marketing, folks. Alex Jones is the best man for the job that they have been able to find. And so he is sitting in his seat. He's been sitting there for 20 years. He does a good job. He makes people a lot of money. And so he's going to keep his seat as long as he's doing his job. If he starts slacking off, they'll find someone to replace him and get rid of him. everyone that you see in power, this idea of media commentators that was born out of the 80s with these shows like Hard Copy, which ironically Bill O'Reilly was on Hard Copy and now he's on Fox, Bill O'Reilly. But all of these tabloid journalism shows, and also you could lump in 60 Minutes and Dateline NBC, because we did whatever Andy Rooney told us to do. For years we did whatever he said, and it was all just commentary. So the idea of the media commentator, we moved from the days of Walter Cronkite, who in his personal life grappled with the need to bring evidence-based journalism to his listeners and his viewers, and to keep himself out of the news and out of the storyline, so that people didn't focus on Walter Cronkite. They focused on the information. And he wanted that sort of Edward R. Murrow sense of journalism to remain in journalism. And since the advent of opinion-based journalism, we've seen this creation called the media commentator, and it has infiltrated even alternative media, where they take no responsibility. They're not investigative journalists. They're just telling you their opinion. And if they are powerful, if they are well-connected, if they are good salesmen, then they get higher and higher positions. And it's true in the mainstream, it's true in the alternative, and for people like me who are evidence-based journalists, this is like watching a loved one die and in hospice, and you know there's nothing you can do for them. I'm watching journalism die. And it upsets me because it's only the evidence. You know, if you base your solutions on supposition and theory and speculation, then your solutions are not going to help you. But if you know the facts, have the evidence, and know exactly who did it, when they did it, what they did, how they did it, who helped them, and what they're doing with it because of what the crime that they committed, you can actually stop them. So we need to come back to evidence. We need to come back to facts and say, okay, I get it. You have an opinion, you have a theory, you have a supposition. That sounds interesting, but where are the facts to back it up? Because if we expect our doctors to show us proof that we have cancer before we start chemotherapy, and if we want proof that our spouse is cheating on us before we get a divorce, and if we want the prosecution to have evidence and not theories when we're standing in a courtroom about to be sentenced to jail, if facts and evidence are important in our lives, in every aspect of the points in our life that are the most important, then we must demand them from the news media, whether it's alternative, independent, or mainstream, because without facts, we're spinning our wheels as the whole world spins down the toilet.
Well, it's interesting that you say the whole world spinning down the toilet, because there's so many different things going on in so many different areas. I'm going to play a clip, and I'm going to play about 5 minutes of it. It's a rather long clip. And then I want to ask you a few questions and get your response on some of this clip, because it covers a whole lot of subjects in the alternative media that we talk about a lot. And I'd like to get your take. So this will be about 5 minutes, so just take a little rest.
This is the United States of America. Why are you hurting people? If you want to go kill and hurt people, go to Iraq. Why y'all doing this to people? Y'all walk around in riot gear like this is a war. I saw them beating people, people that had nothing to do with anything, just grabbing people out the crowd. There's no honor in that. My mom, my father, everybody has served in Iraq, Afghanistan war. I did 14 months in Iraq. My father was in Afghanistan. My mother did a year in Iraq. We fought for this country. I don't come home. I'm in New York City. I am from New York City, and these cops are hurting people that I fought to protect. There's no reason for this. There's no honor in hurting unarmed civilians, and I won't let it happen. Have a good night.
I served with Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines as an automatic machine gunner. There's a term, once a Marine, always a Marine. But there's also the term, eat the apple, F the core. I don't work for you no more.
What sort of training did you have as a Marine? I mean, were you given cultural awareness?
This Republican-Democrat thing, all the world is a stage. Obama is a puppet. He reads the script. He's a teleprompter reader. That's his official job. He doesn't make any decisions. The powers that be that have the majority of power in this world are those that control the financial system. The financial crisis, engineered by these same criminals who are the ultimate fraudsters of the world. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, those are the real string pullers. That's real power. War is out of control, and those who are destroying this world by fraud and deception is what's out of control. 9/11 was the false flag operation used to justify the invasion of Afghanistan. It is the ultimate deception, and it's done for a full-spectrum dominance agenda, which is part of controlling this world by deception. And unless we as people stand up to these treasonous traitors and all of those people carrying out this stuff, and the colluders, including the mass media and the politicians, we are going to continue to get this kind of deception.
The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous that he cannot believe it even exists. And that's the problem we have today. This conspiracy is so monstrous, so demonic, that we tell people about it and they say, you're crazy, this is America, it can't happen here. We have all the evidence needed to prove to anybody, if they'll just look at the evidence, that 9/11 was an inside job.
Fighting the war. I joined up, month out of training, I arrived in Baghdad, Iraq. We believed 9/11 was a lie. This is in 2004. Every source searcher believed 9/11 was a lie. We thought the people would expose the lie, know the war's a lie, and bring us home.
I'm outraged at what is going on. Again, they're using this idea of patriotism and honor. That's bullshit. This war is not about honor. This war is about profiteering. This war is about money. We're nothing but pawns being used for their political agendas. We need to wake up, and these politicians need to stop playing with the citizens' emotions and trying to give them this emotional high and patriotism. Let's speak reality. We need to wake up, America.
What you see with people is that they're desperate to hear what they want to hear, for people to say, oh no, these conspiracy theorists, they're all crazy, they're all paranoid, it's not really going on, it's ridiculous, and this is done to protect you, this is done for you, we're the government, this is why we're doing it, watch the telly, there's a game on it, and you'll be fine, and we're just going to build another concentration camp, okay, see you later.
Take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America.
If we don't act now, we're going to lose all our rights. I served my country. I got an honorable discharge from the Army, and I swore an oath to protect the country from all enemies, foreign, domestic. Now, these people that are operating in our government right now are criminals. Whatever you hear on TV isn't what the reality is. You are losing your rights as we speak. At HR 2749, which is the Food Safety Act, and this affects the entire country. They can stop all forms of transportation in and out of the state. They can destroy vehicles. They can declare martial law. And
okay, let me stop that there. Susan, I'm going to ask a few questions here. I'd like to get you to comment on some of the aspects of this clip. We covered a lot of topics there in 5 minutes. First of all, police brutality, and I know you wanted to talk about some of the events that have occurred in Missouri. Can
police
you start
brutality, there? Absolutely. Police brutality is a problem not only in Ferguson and in Missouri, but it's a problem that is systemic all across this country. We have not made the leaps and strides that we think we have with civil rights. And we've allowed our police departments to, through Program 1033, have all sorts of military-grade weaponry. And if they had access to those weapons during the time of the civil rights movement, I think that the civil rights movement would have gone very differently. Systemically, the problem is currently the St. Louis Police Department has 5 open cases where black men ranging in ages from 27 to 16 were shot by police officers under suspicion. They didn't actually make it to the arrest phase. They were shot and killed under suspicion. We had a gentleman who was recently shot because he wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and he happened to be a black man getting some gas. A gentleman was just shot and killed because he was holding a sandwich. A gentleman recently was shot and had $1,300 stolen from him by the police. And this is another problem that is an article that I'm putting together over the weekend here. It'll be out on Monday. The systemic problem is racism. And I know that everybody doesn't like that, but that's really what's happening. The St. Louis Police Department has a long history, and as well the Ferguson Police Department and the Metropolitan Police Department have long-standing complaint, racial profiling data that's been compiled over years where they are targeting African Americans in their areas for arrests, for pat-downs, for pullovers, harassment. This is actually what is happening. And it is unfortunate that we can't get over this. It's unfortunate that we don't even want to talk about it anymore. It's unfortunate that we've introduced this idea of reverse racism. We are never going to get past this. And the police departments that have access to very scary weaponry are going to use their advantages against the people that they have issues with simply because of the color of their skin, again and again and again, until we deal with the actual problem. Police brutality has a lot more to do with racism than anything else, and that is an archaic idea that needs to be gotten rid of.
Now we're getting a little close on time, I think 5 or 10 minutes until the hour break. Is our president a puppet?
Absolutely. All presidents are puppets.
That's a big statement. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. You have banking institutions who are corporations, and then you have corporations who are corporations. And they pay lots of money to representatives to sway political ideas and agendas and push through bills and create laws and mandates and ordinances. So the politicians that we have and that we've had for many, many, many years throughout the history of this country have been mascots and the best salesman for the job, just like I was explaining about the media commentators. The politicians are just the best man for the job. They're the well-paid. They convince the audience that they are telling the truth, and they are able to keep their audience at bay, their constituents, while they do whatever they are paid to do up there on Capitol Hill. It is all theater, and these are puppets. These are mascots.
Are we facing a conspiracy so large that we cannot even believe it truly exists?
Yes. Because we are facing an information war where the tabloid journalism has moved to the internet. And because we are not so versed in the internet, it's such a new thing to us, even though some of us have grown up with it all their lives. But it's so new to us that we don't understand that it doesn't cost very much to make a website look really good, and it doesn't take very much to make an article seem very plausible. When you try to source evidence, you find that there's lacking. And because we are not discerning based on that factor, we are being fooled by a conspiracy that is so big that it is not actually happening. But what is actually happening is buried in between the inflated version that is meant to scare you into purchasing products and the cognitive dissonance that tells you that it doesn't exist. Somewhere in the middle of that are facts and evidence that point you to exactly what's happening. And I think we need to move away from the extremities and get closer to the middle so we can look through these facts and find out who's actually doing this and get rid of them or get them out of power or fire them or get this thing started so that we can actually make a change, a real change.
Very well said. I think you're very right. There is in the alternative media kind of a, I don't know if extremism is the word, or a kind of a theater about it all. Do the financial elite completely control the mainstream media?
One thing people have to understand about corporations don't really have any money. What they have is cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
They have people injecting money. Do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. They have people, investors, injecting money. They pay their bills, and then they move the money that's left over off to their shareholders that own stock in the company. So what companies have, even the big companies, even Time Warner and all these huge banks, what they have is cash flow. And so what they're doing with this cash flow is creating a system where they don't have to be accountable for the cash flow anymore because there's no physical exchange happening anymore. And so they're moving it into digital payment services, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, chip-to-pin payment services, any way possible that they can keep it in a digital form, they are going for it. And a lot of push is being made by all sides. The governor of California just said, hey, cryptocurrency is just as legitimate as Federal Reserve notes, so they're legal tender, as well as all the way to some members of alternative media who own 4 patents to cryptocurrencies and are on the board of directors of 2 brokerage firms who sell cryptocurrencies, while they're also simultaneously telling you that the dollar is collapsing and you need to buy cryptocurrencies in order to save your dollar or the worth of your money. We have a huge, huge problem going on. Corporations and banks are corporations. Money flow, when the money flow stops, that is the huge problem. Money is a thing. It is a commodity as well as a fiction. And so the more that they can create the fiction, the better off that they are. And so the misconception about money and the misconception about who's controlling and how they control things keeps them in control. Because if we figure out how they exactly do this, we can find ways to stop them. Again, go back to what I just said. We have to go for what's actually happening, not what people who claim to be experts think might be happening.
I think we got 4 minutes until the break, so I know this next answer you're probably going to want to spend more time on the 4 minutes, but just to give you a warning in case the music starts to interrupt you, is Halliburton building concentration camps to house 50 million Americans?
I have not seen any evidence of that, but if you have actual evidence of that, my email address is occupycorporatism@gmail.com. I would love to see actual evidence of it.
So that's some of the theater, then, of the mainstream media, or the alternative media, you think?
Absolutely. Look, these hazmat suits, this company wouldn't see an 160% rise in their stock value in 9 days if fear-mongering, fear porn didn't work. People make a lot of money. Every time something happens, there is a product on both sides of it, and they are pushing you either way to make sure that you buy something.
Well, you know, you always hear the stories about all these coffins they have and all these camps they have set up. Have you done any research on that particular? There's supposed to be hundreds of these camps, these FEMA camps. Is that true? Or I haven't really looked into it in depth.
I have looked at it several times over the years. And the one thing that I'm waiting for is actual evidentiary confirmation that these places are what they say that they are.
Okay.
I'm waiting for someone who works at the FEMA camp to actually come forward. Because until that happens, until we get from a FOIA request some actual document that hasn't been redacted to the point where we can't read it. Until that happens, we're speculating. And again, consumers, the best consumers are people who are freaked out, who are scared, who don't know what the answer is. The most loyal listeners are the ones that are scared and are looking to the broadcaster or the celebrity or whoever it is standing at the podium to tell them what to do because they're just so frightened they just don't know what to do. It takes you back to that childhood time when you first realized that maybe it was when your parents left you at school for the first time and you realized that you were going to be separated from your parents and you felt some abandonment. It harkens back to these psychological traumas, and it's trauma in a very, very small sense that it's just part of life. We have to be separated from our parents. But how we interpret that instance then facilitates how we interpret instances in our lives as adults. And so those who respond to fear porn and fear-mongering will always respond to fear porn and fear-mongering. And they will corral in groups, and they will find ways to justify themselves. And they will accept the word of someone that they look up to over evidentiary proof of whether that person is telling the truth or not. Because I'll give you an example. The gentleman that I know who owns a website, a news website, put out an article and then contacted me and wanted me to vet it after the article was already published. And I said, didn't you vet it before publication? And he said, no, it was too good of a story to check the facts. Oh, we'll continue this on the other side.
Thanks.
We'll be right back. Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fedge, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there's Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fed, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussions with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the matrix. I've been waiting for you. Why am I here? You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. The matrix is older than you know, as you are undoubtedly gathering the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation. Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lassard.
There is no good and evil. There is only power. And those too weak to seek it.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Be sure to tune in weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Strange Universe with Sean David Morden with a strange, interesting, and engaging wide variety of topics. So be here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
I would like to take you on a strange journey.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Our guest this evening is Susanne Posel. Fantastic first hour, absolutely fantastic. It went so quick, and it was just absolutely amazing. I want to remind everyone that we're listener-supported radio. Make sure you take some time and press that PayPal button and make a donation. I think Susan's going to hang around the second hour. I'm probably going to do most of the talking. It's going to be a very different second hour because I'm going to talk a little more about exopolitics. I think Susan has some interest in this subject. I know she has stated that she has watched some of the Ancient Aliens series. So I'm glad to have her on board here, and she'll probably have a few questions. A few comments. We're going to talk during the second hour about the Billy Meier case. Now, Edward Albert Meier is a one-armed farmer from Switzerland. He's about 77 years old now. He lives in a tiny mountain village called Hinterschmidruti, which is about an hour east of Zurich. What's so interesting about this man is that he has had extraterrestrial contact since the age of about 5 years old. And he has a lot of evidence to back it up. He has 1,200 photographs. of the ships, photographs taken inside the ship, looking out at viewing screens and portholes, that sort of thing. He has photographs from space of the Earth, photographs of Mars. Incredible photographs that are very, very difficult to explain. He has 30 minutes of film of these ships hovering around his home in Hinterschmidt-Ruti. He has sound recordings of the ships. There's about 100 other eyewitnesses. He's taken lie detector tests and passed. But what's most interesting to me and why I keep studying this case is because his writings, he's probably written 20 or 30 books, most of which unfortunately are in German. But I have read at least 3 of them that are in English. And the information in there is stunning. It answers all the big questions in life. Who are we? Where do we come from? What's the purpose of our life? What the creator of our universe is really like. What the other people in our galaxy are like. What has happened in our ancient past here on the Earth, and what our solar system was like in the ancient past. Our solar system was very different. Who built these ancient megalithic structures all over the Earth? What is the purpose of our life? What happens after we die? All these big questions are answered by this farmer from Switzerland who has about a 5th grade education. His contact started in 1945 when he started getting these telepathic messages from a man named Svath. And Billy would also see these mental images. And during one of these telepathic contacts, he was told to go out into the forest. Now, at this time, he was living in a place called Bulak. There were a lot of beautiful forests there. There's a lot of beautiful forests all over Switzerland, some very wonderful mountains. It's just a spectacular place. But Billy was playing in the forest, and he was looking down at a stream, and he was watching these fish move around in the stream. And then outside the corner of his eye, he saw this silvery pear-shaped craft come out of the sky, and it moved closer and closer to the earth, and finally it hovered about an inch or so above the ground, and out stepped this very elderly man named Svath. And he had on something that kind of looked like a diver's suit. And he walked over, took young Billy by the hand, and led him into the ship. And Svath took Billy some 70,000 meters above the earth. And here this young boy, about 5 years old, has a breathtaking view of the earth from space. And he's stunned by this. I mean, he gets to see the big picture. And he looks around inside this ship, and he sees all of these, what he thought were windows at first, but were actually viewing screens. And he saw all these people in these viewing screens. And Svath started to talk to young Billy. And he told young Edward Albert Meier that he had a very ancient spirit, and that he had reincarnated on the earth before, and that during his past lives he had been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And in each one of these lifetimes he taught this ancient universal teaching called the teaching of the Spirit, which over hundreds of years, in fact thousands of years, got distorted into many of the religions that we have today. Now, Svath placed a device on Billy's head, And Sfath told him that it would wake up the wisdom of his predecessor personalities. And Billy has a very interesting writing that kind of explains this experience. It was pretty amazing. But Sfath warned Billy about his life. He said he would have a very hard life, that he would lose his left arm in a bus accident in the Middle East, that he would have many attempts on his life. People would try to kill him because of his teaching, that even his own wife would attack him. He would live a very difficult life. But he said eventually the information in his teaching would lead the people of the earth into a very different time that will take place about 800 years from now. He told Billy that we were entering into an age called the third millennium, and that in the third millennium, our leaders would become megalomaniacal, that they would take away our rights of self-determination. And he also said that the people of the earth would go through a time of maliciousness and confusion, and that people would become indolent, lazy, and they would become obtuse. It would be hard for them to understand, and they would become indifferent. And that the third millennium would start when the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, Sfath was Billy's teacher for about 11 years. And then Sfath actually passed away. But before Sfath died, he told Billy that he would have another teacher. And that when he was 16 years old, he would get another teacher and she would come and pick him up in a robotic craft. So Billy, when he was 16 years old, he went up on this hill and he waited. And out of the sky came a craft. It landed. The hatch opened, and he looked inside, and there was no one in there. And he went inside the ship, and he sat down. The ship became invisible. He became invisible. And then he was sped away to the Middle East. Now, he landed in a country called Jordan, and when Billy stepped out, he recognized Jordan from the heat and the red rocks, and it was becoming evening at this point. And out of the sky came something that looked like a falling star, and it came lower and lower, and then it landed. And Billy had to wait a half an hour, and then out stepped this striking woman from another world. And Billy had this profound sense that he knew her for some reason. And he asked her, "How is it that I feel I know you?" And she told him that, "I can't tell you that information, but you're going to have to come into my ship because we're going to go to Giza. We're going to go to the Great Pyramid, and there's some things I have to show you there." So Billy went in to ask his ship, and they landed somewhere in Egypt near the Great Pyramid, and they walked out of her ship, and she put something on his belt and then pressed a button on this device, and Billy became invisible, and she pressed something on her own belt, and she became invisible. And she told him that they were going to go into this secret passageway, and they were going to travel far below the Giza Plateau, underground, for a long, long way, in these very old passages, and that they would have to be very quiet because they're going to go into these old cubicle constructions that are some 72,000 years old. And there are people down there. And if they're found out, they're going to be in big trouble. So they do just that, and they travel along these corridors underground that are very, very dark and very, very ancient. And they finally get to where they see a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And eventually Billy walks into what looks like a giant hallway. And the light seems to come from everywhere and yet nowhere. And he sees this giant spacecraft down there and these guards and what looks like religious artifacts on the ground. And he's stunned by this, and he doesn't know what to think of it. And Asket can see that Asket's the woman's name. I don't know if I mentioned that. Asket can see that he is very troubled by what he's seeing, so she decides to take him back to the surface. So when they go back to the surface, Asket explains to Billy that since ancient times, there had been this extraterrestrial group on the Earth, that they were a splinter group of a benevolent group, and that they had kind of fooled the people of the Earth with religions, and that they had presented themselves at times as God, as angels, and they had also used a kind of technology on the people of the Earth called telenotic impulses, which makes us susceptible to these kinds of illusions and delusions. And that they had tried, since the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, to control the people of the Earth primarily through religion. And Billy was just stunned by this. He was just amazed by this. So Asket took him back to Switzerland, where he contemplated what he had been told by Sloth and what he had been told by Asket, and he decided that he was going to study the religions of the Earth, and that he was going to leave Switzerland. And one of the places that he ended up was in India, at a place called the Asoka Ashram, where he studied Buddhism. And Asket's ship would literally be seen hovering over this Ashoka Ashram even during the day. Now the gardeners there also saw Billy walking through the gardens with Asket. They thought that she was a goddess from heaven. However, there was one little girl there named Phobal Chang that had telepathic contact from Asket, as well as she saw her as well. And she realized that she was actually, Asket was a woman from another world. I have clips, I'm not going to play them, but of Phobal Chang, who eventually became a UN diplomat. And she points out exactly where the ship would come, where it would hover over the building, where the gardeners were. And eventually she went back to visit Billy, and later in life, and she spoke openly that the contacts were real and that they did take place. Now eventually Billy had his tremendous bus accident where he lost his left arm. Remember, Svath told him that that would happen to him. And he met his wife, Calliope there, a Greek woman, and eventually he moved back to Switzerland, and he had 11 years of a normal life. He raised 3 children. He had no extraterrestrial contacts. He worked various different jobs. And then in 1975, his contacts picked up again. And a woman named Semyase would land her beam ship, originally out in the open during the day on the hillside or in the valley, and meet with Billy. She would walk over to him and sit under a tree, and she would tell him the most fascinating things. She talked about ancient Earth history. She talked about her people. She talked about what would happen in our future. She also talked about the most interesting thing that I find most interesting. She talked about something that she called the creation. She said the creation is the universal consciousness. She said that the people of the earth had gotten confused in their religions over time, and they had used the term God, which is not really an accurate depiction of what the creation is like. She explained it in very poetic terms. She said that love and wisdom go together, and that the creation and its laws are love and wisdom at the same time. She explained that the universe is the physical manifestation of the wisdom of this spirit, but that the spirit itself that created all things was neither good nor evil, that it builds universes as a part of its own evolution, and that there are actually billions of universes. She explained that human spirits are created to help the universal consciousness finish its evolvement. She explained that every human being has within them a human spirit. And she said the human spirit does not sleep. She says that it records all of your thoughts and all of your actions. She said if you learn to listen to it, it will tell you when your thinking is right or wrong. She explained that the human spirit resides in the center of our midbrain in an area called the superior colliculus. That's the area that controls eyesight. The human spirit spreads an energy throughout the whole body like a filigree web. It animates every cell in your body. The human spirit, when you die, comes out of your physical body, and it goes into this etheric band of energy that exists around every planet that supports higher life. And this universal consciousness takes your previous life experiences and stores them in something called the storage banks. And then at the appropriate time, which can be fairly long, here on the earth, the normal time right now would be about 100 to 150 years, that spirit is placed back into the body of a child 21 days after the sperm fertilizes the egg. Now, an interesting thing happens. Every time a spirit reincarnates, you're given a new personality by something that the Meier material calls the comprehensive consciousness block. But the wisdom of your previous personalities are stored in your subconscious. Now, you generally can't access them, but while you grow back up, you'll get inspiration from those previous personalities during your lifetime. They'll come from your subconscious, and you'll get impulses from the storage banks. And that's the way wisdom builds on top of wisdom throughout many lifetimes, because the whole purpose of our life is to gather wisdom. And we live many, many lifetimes, according to Semjase. Now, Semjase's people allowed themselves to be called the Pleiadians up until about 1999 when they revealed their true identity. They're not from our Pleiades, but from a star some 80 light years beyond our Pleiades in what's called a different space-time configuration. Semjase explained that our physical universe has a structure. And if you, for example, would cut down a tree, and look at a stump, you would see these concentric rings. Our universe is the same way, but it has three-dimensional layers which rotate. They counter-rotate. The fourth layer in this group of rings is called the material belt. That's where the stars, the galaxies, in the material universe lies. But there's all these other layers. And a kind of energy comes in from the fifth belt, the transformational belt, and it manifests into physical reality. Now, if that wasn't complicated enough, she explained that there are multiple different space-time configurations, and that her people reside in another space-time configuration than we do here on the Earth. She said that the planet that they live on is called Era. It's much like the Earth. She said, but it has a higher oxygen content. She said on her world there is no war anymore, but they used to have war. She said on her world there's no more disease, but they used to have disease. She said they no longer pollute the air or the water. They live in balance with nature. There's no money. And she said that the most interesting thing, she said that our forefathers are your forefathers. And she called our mutual forefathers the Lyrians. And in the Meier material, in a much later contact, it says that this individual named Nocodamian led the Lyrians from the depths of the known universe into the constellation of Lyra millions, probably billions of years ago. The Lyrians lived in an older space-time configuration than we do here on the Earth. And we would call them giants by our standards. Not only physical giants, but they were millions, in fact billions of years ago. They were at a higher level than we are now. But there are common forefathers. They live in what Semjase called creational wisdom. And they've learned to unlock the power of this human spirit that she talked about. She said that the human spirit is the seat of the infinite, but few people realize that. And she explained that in the ancient past, that the Lyrians could do telepathy, telekinesis. They could look into the future, they could look into the past. But at times, they still had flaws. They had flaws, and at times they had wars and disagreements among themselves. And that there was one of these Lyrian kings of wisdom who left the constellation of Lyra and eventually settled on her world called Era. Now, she also said that in the ancient past here on Earth, some nearly 300,000 years ago, that the Lyrians did come here. And they were much larger than the Earth people. They were giants by our standard. Not only that, they were very advanced, both with their consciousness, but also with their technology. And that the people of the earth were overwhelmed, and they called them gods, but they really weren't. Some of the Lyrians, though, committed certain crimes while they were here. And those Lyrians that committed these crimes were left behind on the earth. They were stranded. Their technology was taken, and they entered into what's called a codex. When they reincarnate on the earth, they have locked within their predecessor personalities the memories, even though it may not be conscious, the memories of a higher civilization. And that's part of the difficulty here on the earth, that we have many spirits of different ages. But Billy, in a later book, would write that even the oldest spirits here are still fairly young, and that before the human beings of Earth evolved to all these 7 evolutionary steps that the Meier material talks about, we'll eventually have to leave the beautiful blue world that we call Earth to finish our evolution. Now, I have a very quick clip. It's actually not a quick clip. I'm going to play part of it. It's by a researcher named Ian Stevenson, a researcher on reincarnation, that'll talk a little bit about children's and past life memories.
This little boy is referred to as Sam in case studies. A year and a half before he was born, his grandfather died.
When he was about 18 months old, his dad was changing his diaper one day, and Sam looked up at him and said, "When I was your age, I used to change your diaper."
Since 1996, Dr. Jim Tucker, a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia, has been gathering case studies of past life recognition in children that could prove that a soul returns to Earth in another body.
We've now got 2,500 cases in our files from all over the world.
Many people believe in some form of reincarnation. The concept dates back to 800 BC and the Hindu Upanishads. Beginning in India, the belief that some essential part of ourselves may return after death to a new body is now being examined by some scientists as another way to prove the survival of consciousness. Can the study of past life recollections support this theory? The answer may lie within young children's memories.
Very young children, usually between the age of 2 or 3, who start reporting that they have memories from having had a past life. Some of them talk about being deceased relatives, but others will talk about being strangers in other locations. And if they give enough details, like the name of the other location, people have often gone there and found that, in fact, someone had died in the recent past whose life matches the details that the children gave.
The late psychiatrist Dr. Ian Stevenson advanced the field of reincarnation research in the 1960s, interviewing over 3,000 people who claimed to have past life memories. 2/3 of them said that in a previous life they died from unusual causes. He focused on 25 cases in India and realized that young children talking about past lives was much more common than anyone had known. Dr. Stevenson created categories to screen for cases worthy of further study. His colleague, Jim Tucker, still uses this method.
The criteria we use to decide whether to register a case would include 2 of the following characteristics: a prediction of rebirth, an announcing dream, a birthmark or birth defect that seems related to the previous life, statements of memories about the previous life, behaviors that seem related, and then also recognitions of people or places from that life.
Sam's story is an example of how a small child may express what some believe are memories of a previous life.
When Sam was 4 and a half, his grandmother died, and his father went out to take care of her belongings. When he came back, he brought a group of family photos, which before that, Sam's family had not had any of his father's family photos in the house. One night, Sam's mom had them spread out on the coffee table looking at them when Sam came over and started pointing to pictures of his grandfather.
Mommy, where did these come from?
Those are pictures Daddy brought back from Grandma's funeral.
That's my car.
You see that picture?
Turned out that was the grandfather's first new car and one that he was very attached to. His parents had no belief in reincarnation. In fact, his mother was the daughter of a Southern Baptist minister.
Sammy, come talk to Mommy for a minute.
It's just a coincidence.
Sam's mother became intrigued by her son's statements. She started testing him with questions about his grandfather. She showed him a class photo of when his grandfather was in grammar school.
Sammy, do you recognize anyone in this photo?
There I am.
No, Sammy, that's your grandpa when he was a boy.
No, that's me.
When I looked at the picture, even after having looked at the other pictures of his grandfather, I really would not have been able to say with any certainty which boy I thought was the grandfather. And of course, Sam was 4 at the time that he did this.
Some children not only remember their past life, but the afterlife as well.
About 20% of the children will describe events between the time when the previous person died and when the child was born.
So I wanted to pick back up here in our story and talk a little bit about Edward Albert Meier's previous lives. I had said earlier in the show that Billy had been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. But Enoch, the extraterrestrials say his real name was Henoch, and that there were actually 3 important reincarnations of this same spirit form of Edward Albert Meier. 3 Henochs. The most important was the second Henoch. He was born in 8903 BC. And he made a whole series of prophecies about things that would happen in the North American continent during our time. And one of the things he talked about was what was called firestorms and rolling walls of fire in the North American continent. I never knew what this was until the past 2 years. Well, we've had these incredible firestorms in the West. And for example, we had what they called the Rim Fire in 2013 that burned 400 square miles, just to name one of them, up in Northern California. This year we had the Carlton Complex fire, which burned roughly 400 square miles. And we've seen something that we've never seen before. And there are these rotating funnel clouds of fire where the airspeed gets up to 200 and 300 miles per hour in these fires. And I always wondered what a firestorm was. So that's an example of one of the Meier, I think, could be one of the Meier prophecies being fulfilled. The most disturbing Meier prophecy in the Henoch prophecies, it says that in the future in the Northern Hemisphere that nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons will be released by automated systems that run outside of human control, and this will be the greatest disaster in recorded history. Now, these are prophecies, which means they may or may not happen depending on what we do and what our activity here on the earth is. And I wanted to, before I totally get off on this tangent of of prophecy and the Meier prophecies being fulfilled, I also wanted to talk a little bit more about the universal consciousness. And one aspect of it, and Billy writes about this in a couple of his books, he says that the incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation. They call the Spirit the creation. And that at every moment, at every place, and every day, we can experience the radiating love of creation. And that we should be able to look at a tree and recognize that love is the highest principle in creation, and everything follows with that logic. And every tiny plant and every tiny animal in creation fulfills its purpose. And Billy has this wonderful writing. It's called The Goblet of Truth. And it has a paragraph in it that's entitled, What the Truth Knows to Say. And it goes on to explain that rivers, lakes, streams, stones, the earth, bushes, trees, everything that crawls and flies on the earth is a life form with a spirit form. And these spirit forms are on a journey through time that involve many, many lifetimes. And that death is just the passage to rebirth. Rebirth into the world of pure spirit, and that many of these creatures are connected by psychic vibrations, and they communicate with one another. And if you go into the forest, you can hear the crickets, you can hear the cicadas, you can hear the birds sing. And I like to say the birds sing because they can sense the radiating love of creation. I don't know that for certain, but that's my own theory. And you can see the birds as they move as a unit. You can see 20 or 30 birds, especially this time of year, fly from tree to tree like they were a single unit, because they are connected by these psychic vibrations. And one of the messages of the extraterrestrials is that we here on the earth have to relearn our creative connection to all things, because these spirit forms come from the same source. So when you go into the forest and you hear the cicadas, and you hear the frogs, and you hear the peepers, and you see all these different aspects of plant life, you're seeing a kind of consciousness. And everything is bound together in creation, and it's all one. And our scientists are starting to learn this. And there's an interesting guy. His name is Brendan Hughes, and he has a fantastic little talk on what the universal consciousness is. And we'll listen to a little bit of Brendan Hughes, because our scientists are starting to understand what consciousness is.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to speak on the emergence of universal consciousness. Now, admittedly, that's a controversial topic. And it's a controversial topic because so far, universal consciousness has not been scientifically proven to be true. But this conception that things need to be scientifically proven in order for them to be true is itself false. And that's neatly demonstrated each and every time scientists discover something new, something that we didn't know before. Most recently, scientists are finding evidence for the Higgs boson. But if it's true that it exists, then it means it's existed for millions and millions of years. It's always been true. So, I think the way to play a game of philosophical chess is to try and start with just one sentence that we can maybe agree upon, and then see if we can take it forward one step at a time until the next sentence just seems too improbable or too outlandish, and that's really where we should stop. By the end of this talk, you might agree or disagree with everything I say, and that's fine. If you should find yourself coming to agree for the first time that some of these concepts are possibly true, then that could change the way you possibly think about many things. So I'd like to start with a simple proposition, and one that is credited to Aristotle. The whole is something greater than the sum of its parts. Or put another way, everything that exists both as a whole unto itself, as well as a component of some greater holistic system. Now, there's a lot of evidence for this proposition. For example, we know that electrons are individually charged particles, but we also know that electrons are components of atoms. Atoms are components of molecules. Molecules are components of organisms. Organisms arise within systems and ecosystems. Ecosystems are located on planets. Planets are components of solar systems, and solar systems are components of galaxies, and galaxies components of universes. So it does seem that everything that exists both as a whole unto itself and as a component within a greater whole. Now, if that's true, then it suggests that your true holistic identity consists of both your narrow self-identity and your component identity within a greater system. And if you can come to accept that it is your narrow self-identity that is endowed with your self-consciousness, then you can at least begin to question whether the holistic system of which you're a component has holistic consciousness. And we'll come back to that question in a minute. But we need to start by discussing what do we mean by consciousness. There's no uniform scientifically accepted definition of the term consciousness. I think consciousness means the ability to sense or to respond to what you sense in your environment, whether it's your internal or your external environment. That's what I think consciousness is. Imagine this example. You wake up a little bit late one morning and you decide to skip breakfast. You're on your way to a meeting and you're walking down the street and you smell some freshly baked croissants coming from a nearby bakery. The smell triggers a chemical response in your brain which stimulates your appetite. You turn, you walk into the bakery, and you order a croissant. So what about plants? Well, when plants experience their environment, why don't we call it consciousness? We know that leaves will turn to face the sun to absorb its energy. We know that an entire field of sunflowers will all face east in the morning when the sun rises and they detect the sun's rays. They will then track the sun across the sky throughout the day and then all face west at sunset. We know that plants' roots will penetrate the earth and then extend in various angles as they seek out water. But we don't call this consciousness. I think consciousness is an attribute. It's not a measure of one's ability. It is something that you either have or you don't have, and you can have it in different measures. So, with plants, why don't we call this consciousness? We call it things like holotropism. And we tend to say with plants it's not consciousness because it's fundamentally a chemical process. It's not consciousness. But neurobiologists are telling us that our own brains are fundamentally super chemical computers, and that our own decisions, the actions we take, and indeed our entire state of consciousness at any particular time is fundamentally influenced by chemical processes in the brain and the chemical balance in our brain at any particular time. So I think not calling non-human things conscious is a weak distinction to make, and frankly, egotistical. We need to get over ourselves in that way. Surely any living thing that can experience its environment and that can respond to what it senses in its environment is conscious, but conscious in a way that makes sense to that thing, makes sense to its ability to sustain its own life.
It's a very, very long clip. I think it's very important. I think the most important thing he said is we exist as a whole unto ourselves as well as a component of a larger system. And the argument he's making is that the larger system also has a consciousness. There is a universal consciousness. And he states that plants, for example, like sunflowers, will all face east in the morning and they'll track the sun across the sky. So each form of consciousness has a kind of consciousness that's useful to that particular animal or that particular plant. And the Meier material says that plants, animals, human beings all have a spirit form. And the human has a special spirit form that reincarnates as well as do plants and animals. But we have a consciousness evolution that takes place, and that we reincarnate many, 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 many times. And there are 7 evolutionary steps that these extraterrestrials told Billy that human races go through. And we here on the Earth are at the 2nd step, which is called rational life. She said, some of us have moved into what they call the 3rd stage, which is intelligent life. Semyase explained that her people are at the 4th and 5th stage of evolution. And she explained that at the 4th stage, that human civilizations become true spacefaring civilizations, and they conquer the problems of space and time, and that they will build ships. She said that her ship actually had an organic intelligence as its central computer, and that her ship was actually a living being with a metallic hull. And she explained that they used a kind of technology that would turn, for just an instant, her ship and everything within her ship into kind of an energetic state, where they would step out of our material belt and into this other, one of these other layers I described, where time is very different, and they can jump from star system to star system that way. And that's the way they conquer space and time. She explained that there are 7 million solar systems in the Milky Way galaxy that support higher life, and that there was other human life sprinkled lightly through these different solar systems, and that there are roughly 3,600,000 human civilizations in our space-time configuration, but there were these other space-time configurations as well. She explained that there was a race of extraterrestrial humans here on the Earth that have been here since about 180,000 years ago. She called them the Hyperboreans, and she said they're related to the white race here on Earth. They're a blonde people, and they have a city within Mount Shasta of about 300 people. And that their golden color spacecrafts can be seen leaving the eastern side of that mountain. And there's only about 700 of these Hyperboreans left. They do have a few other bases here on the Earth. One base is close to the Aleutian Islands. she explained sometimes they'll use these beam weapons they have as kind of a stunning device if Earth humans get too close. She said that in our ancient past, a man named Nebuchadnezzar used to speak with one of these extraterrestrials. And this extraterrestrial gave him advice on how to build an ark and save a few of the animals and save part of his family from a great disaster. So there are other human civilizations in our Milky Way galaxy. We're not alone. We're part of a bigger system of life. Our history is much different than what our historians have told us. Our ancient megalithic structures like the Great Pyramid are actually more like 73,000 years old, and they were built with the help of some of these extraterrestrial humans that came here from other star systems. Anyway, I know I kind of went on a whole roll there for the whole hour. Sorry about that, Susan. Sorry about that, everyone. I sometimes get a little carried away when I'm talking about this stuff. I think we've only got about 1 minute left until the music is going to kick in. Some of the prophecies that have come true from the Meier material include the death of John Lennon, the Arab-Israeli War in 1967. We're also told that our... Oh, there we go, folks. Thanks a bunch for coming. Thanks, Susan, for coming. It was a great show. I really enjoyed it. Have a good weekend, folks. Good evening.